Good morning. So it's 1:20, but this chart is for like 1:14. Monday, July 14th, and what I'm thinking about today is not forever wars is a part of it, but I was thinking about when you get stuck in an endless do loop and there doesn't seem to be any way out. Now, I remember a friend of mine was on stage in junior high school, and he had to read the homeroom challenges, and he couldn't get out of the loop. Room 101 challenges room 102 to an ice cream bar and an ice cream sandwich. Everybody yelled. Then room 101 challenges room 102, and he went on and on and on. And some teacher or somebody should have the sense to say, hey, this is going to go on forever. And break the cycle by saying, well, and these other 20 are all the same thing. And now moving right along, room 102. I also thought about another situation where they had a rule in very little girls softball that you couldn't strike out. So you could take as many balls as necessary until you swung the bat. Well, there was a little girl there. I think she was probably backward, as they would call it today, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, she never swung. And the rules were that if she didn't swing, they kept pitching. And it was clear to me that after 20 pitches, she was never going to swing. And he said, "Well, they were locked in their rule, and they had somebody that had defeated the system." And I was telling myself, I don't know what happened. I mean, we must have got out of it somehow, because here I am. Because otherwise, we'd be like the Kingston Trio. The man was stuck on in the MTA, the man who never returned. And they never let him off the train because he needed one more nickel. And it went on and on and on. And in fact, it reminds me of Alliance City Council when I was on it, 35 years ago. They never found a way out of, whatever do loop they were locked into. And I have a feeling that probably the United States of America right now is locked in the do loop. They're obviously making big blunders, and yet they don't seem to see a way out of it. Now it comes to mind that a great man named Alexander the Great was once said to have cut the Gorgian knot. And what that means, cut the Gorgian knot, in other words, they say, well, here was a knot that the Gorgons had proposed, and they said whoever untied the knot would conquer the world. Well, and many people, would-be conquerors, tried to unravel that knot, but they couldn't. But what Alexander the Great did, according to the story, is he took his sword and cut it in half. Wham! And then he picked the threads out very easily, and he went on to conquer the world with that same sword, I imagine. But anyway, that's getting out of an endless do loop. Now, when I was calculating this whole business, I was hoping to see a chart where Admetos was prominent, because Admetos represents the principle of going round and round and round forever and ever and ever, and locked into seemingly an endless loop. Well, Admetos does move, but I can tell you it's very slow. It's been transiting my midheaven for the last several years, and it's very, very slow. Now, the purpose of Admetos, if you want to look at it spiritually, if you believe in such things, if you believe there's purpose to the universe for which we humans have been selected out, which I personally don't exactly believe that, but what I look at is, well, we are intelligent beings, and we do have some willpower and some intelligence and some luck, and what Admetos puts you in an endless repetition, but you're supposed to learn something and eventually find the loophole to get out of it. But Admetos isn't going to make it easy. Now here we have Admetos. Trying the Pluto Volcanus axis. So I'm going to try something different today. I'm going to make a new horoscope. Now we have and then I suppose I'll have to show it to you, won't I? And how to make these charts in real time. I suppose if I knew what I was doing, I could do it. Let's see, save chart bitmap as, I don't know, we'll call that now 1. And then when I go back to my image, locked in a loop forever, that's what that chart is called, but now we're going to talk about now 1. Yeah. Wow, that's encouraging. Okay. So we now have another chart before us, which is called now 1. Now notice, oh well, there. You notice Hades Kronos was on the midheaven. Now Kronos moved off, and that Hades glyph is actually a very interesting configuration this July. The sun is in Cancer, which I find interesting because I was born July 9th, so the sun just transited my my natal sun just last week. But also there's Dionysus, which is back to its original position when I was born. But more germane to you, there's that Hades glyph. That's Waldemath, Dark Moon Lilith, and then we have Kronos, which is legitimately there in 15 of Cancer, and then we have the actual Hades, which is in 14 of Cancer. So we have which is represented by HAD. And the reason this is so obscure and I don't have a glyph for Waldemath is because I'm using somebody else's software, which is pretty nice software, but I don't have the expertise to call the Hades glyph Waldemath. Well, actually I do. If you look down on the listing, there is a Waldemath. So here we are stuck in an endless do loop, and boy, if I ever had any customers, I've lost them by now. Anyway, there's the Waldemath Lilith conjunct the Sun, which seems to indicate some sort of deficiency. I mean, Waldemath, I think the modern astrologers, they talk about Lilith as your inner wild, and they see the planet Lilith, which is actually down in the first house between Apollo and Poseidon, as the inner wild. Kind of a femme fatale idea. Well, this femme fatale is now committing genocide. So, and I think maybe your Apollo Poseidon midpoint. Apollo is your activity, and Poseidon is your idealistic, religion, you might say, world view of the world. So we have, actions based on faith. That's the Apollo. Apollo, in other words, being a true believer, a crusader for your cause. And I guess but when with Lilith on the middle, that's representing a cause that's kind of all messed up. Or Lilith, or you can say, in the case of the Jewish genocide on the Arabs, it's literally a crusade, because the crusade, crusader is a dirty word if you're an Arab, because it represents the Europeans that came over in 1200 into the Holy Land to recapture the Holy Land. As you read about, Richard the Lionhearted and the Crusades. Yeah, well, that's a dirty word to the Arabs. But the Crusades is, another killing spree or fighting spree against between the Christians and the Arabs, the Muslims. Well, let's see. Yeah. Now that's part of this endless loop we're talking about, because what does it? Notice it trines all that business in the first house, forms a grand trine with Kronos, which is the government, and Hades, Kronos and Hades. Some sort of. We have like three similar planets here. One is HAD, which is the Uranian astrology Hades. The other is the glyph, which is on the midheaven of Uranian astrology Hades, but that's actually Waldemath. And then come down here to the first house in Scorpio, the one we were talking about that was between Apollo and Poseidon. That's your Black Moon Lilith, with the official glyph there. Notice they're all waning moons, though. But now, notice that we're forming a grand trine to the moon, the moon itself, Luna, which is in 9 of Pisces. So I'm going to make a chart right here of showing nothing but the moon, Lilith, Waldemath, Kronos, Apollon and Poseidon, and I'm going to save this as Moon 1. Eventually, I suppose. Now, now I've got to show you Moon 1. Well, I'm sure nobody's going to ever watch the video up to this point, but except me. I will look at it and study it and figure out, well, what did I do that was good? All right, there it is, the Grand Trine. What did I do that went right? And how can I do this in real time in such a way as to not lose my audience? My audience of 3 people anyway. Yeah, so, but notice, now, the endless do loop would be represented by Admetos. I'm going to go back to an earlier chart and show us the Sun and Kronos on the midheaven, which represents the living power of the state. I want to put Admetos in there this time. I also want to put the Saturn Neptune, which is some sort of a sickness that the whole world is caught in. That's in one of Aries. In other words, it represents it being near the point 0 of Aries, which the Iranian astrologers consider as another planet, which they call Aries. But that's in a configuration with Pluto and Vulcanus, the Pluto-Vulcanus opposition. And let's see, Admetos. Oh, then I also want to show you the Lilith and Apollon and Poseidon. Well, that's enough planets. I would also include Hades there, but I forget how to do that. Yeah, well. Endless loop 1. Now this time we're going to change the Endless loop 1. So we have the grand trine, which we've talked about before, between Kronos and Lilith and the moon, or actually Kronos, Hades, or Waldemath, and Lilith and the moon. I see Waldemath is missing there, so I use the Hades. And then at the same time we have the Admetos, the evrocircular, which is in the 8th house. Now it's just forming a sextile to Saturn and Neptune in the 6th, and Pluto on the cusp. Well, Pluto in 3 of Aquarius in the 4th. Now I think what would be telling, if as astrologers we could find some aspect to this endless loop. As it is, we have Admetos, the endless loop, Saturn and Neptune, the sickening, sick evil, and by the way, this is going on all over the world, at your house too. It's this is all over. It's some sort of evil that the world, or the earth, seems to be stuck with right now. And then the third point was, so it was Admetos, Saturn and Neptune, and then little Pluto. Then we find that Pluto actually goes out to make this configuration with the opposite. So Pluto is, mighty power, and power. And then when it's opposite to the Volcanus, is mighty power, the mighty power of the endless circulating, the endless bicycle, the endless spinning bicycle wheel of mighty power. And that Volcanus, that's interesting. That forms another one of these little setups with Volcanus, Admetos, and then the Saturn Neptune. So we have sextile Volcanus to Admetos, another sextile to Saturn, Neptune, another sextile to Pluto, which is beginning to form a total circle. Yeah, so anyway, I guess this has gone on long enough. Bill Kennick, Uranian astrologer.